The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Union was a sight that never failed to impress. Crystalline walls stretched 300 meters high, and representatives from 400 species filled the floating platforms that circled the central stage. Today, however, the chamber was only half full. Another routine session, another boring agenda. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the human platform, her gray hair tied back in a simple knot. She wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, clean and pressed but unremarkable compared to the glowing robes and glittering armor worn by other species. She waited patiently for the chamber's attention. Order called High Arbiter Vex, a towering Varaxian with purple scales. His voice boomed through the chamber. The human delegation has requested time to address the council. A few representatives looked up from their datapads. Most continued their private conversations. Chen stepped forward. Her voice was calm and clear. Honored members of the Galactic Council, I stand before you today to formally announce humanity's withdrawal from this body. After 300 years of membership, Earth and all human colonies will be departing the Galactic Union, effective immediately. Silence fell across the chamber, but not the shocked kind. It was the silence of mild surprise, like hearing that a neighbor was moving away. Arbiter Vex blinked his large golden eyes. Ambassador Chen, this is unexpected. Might I ask the reason for this decision? We believe it is time for humanity to pursue a different path, Chen replied simply. We thank the Council for the centuries of cooperation. All human personnel will vacate Council facilities within 3 standard months. Our embassies will close in an orderly fashion. We wish you all well. She bowed slightly and stepped back. That was it. No dramatic speech. No accusations. No demands in the observation gallery. Ambassador Krell of the Threen Dominion laughed, his snake-like body coiling with amusement. Finally, he said to his aide, the humans were always so ... average. Not strong like the Calter. Not brilliant like us Threen. Not wealthy like the Merchants Guild, just there taking up space and resources. His aide, a younger Threen named Voss, nodded but said nothing. He had worked with human staff before. They had always been helpful. Around the chamber, other delegates murmured similar sentiments. The Varaxians were relieved one less voice in debates. The Calter warriors barely noticed humans had never been important in military matters. The merchant princes calculated that human trade routes could be redistributed for profit. Only a few seemed concerned. Ambassador Miara of the Kalish watched Chen leave the chamber, her blue skin darkening with worry. She was young for a diplomat, only 60 standard years, and she had studied Earth cultures extensively. This is wrong, she whispered to her assistant. This feels very wrong. Over the next 3 months, humans began leaving. From every corner of galactic space, they packed their belongings and boarded ships, heading toward Earth and its colonies. Dr. James Wright closed his medical clinic on Station Prometheus. For 40 years, he had treated patients from 20 different species, learning their biology, training their doctors. His Vraxian replacement arrived 2 days before his departure. Good luck, Wright said, handing over his files. The medical database has everything you need. I have also left detailed notes on cross-species treatments. The Varaxian doctor barely looked at him. I am sure I will manage. I graduated top of my class. Wright smiled sadly and left. On the agricultural world of plenty, human farmers finished their final harvest. They had spent 2 centuries turning the barren planet into a breadbasket that fed 15 systems. The colonial administrator, a merchant prince named Zelix, waved them off cheerfully. We appreciate your work, Zelix said. But farming is simple work. Any species can do it. The lead farmer, an elderly woman named Maria Santos, just nodded. The soil needs specific nutrients every 3rd season, she reminded him. It is all in the files we left. Yes, Zelix said, already walking away in the Council's central computer core. Human technicians downloaded their personal files and logged out of the systems. They had maintained the network for generations, fixing problems before anyone else knew they existed. The head technician, a man named Kumar Patel, left a detailed maintenance schedule on the chief administrator's desk. The administrator, a floating gas being called Wix, glanced at the 1,000-page document and set it aside. "Surely this can be simplified," Wix said. Throughout the galaxy, the same scene repeated. Embassies closed. Research stations emptied. Human trade ships rerouted to Earth's space. Mediators who had resolved disputes for centuries collected their belongings. Teachers who had educated thousands of alien students returned to human worlds. Engineers who had designed infrastructure packed their tools. Ambassador Miara tried to track it all. The numbers troubled her. She ran a search through the council database. How many positions did humans hold? The results shocked her. Humans occupied over 3 million roles across council space. But when she filtered for high-profile positions, the number dropped to barely 3,000. The rest were support staff, technicians, farmers, teachers, mediators, researchers, and unglamorous fields. They were everywhere, she realized, doing everything that everyone else thought was boring. On the final day, Ambassador Chen stood in the empty Earth Embassy building. The flags had been lowered. The lights were off. She ran her hand along the wall one last time, remembering the generations of humans who had worked here, hoping to build something meaningful with the galaxy's other civilizations. Her communicator buzzed. "Ambassador, the last transport is ready." "Coming," she replied. As her ship departed council space, Chen looked back at the glittering stations and worlds they were leaving behind. She felt no anger, no bitterness, just a deep sadness, like saying goodbye to a friend who never really knew you. Behind her, the galaxy continued spinning. The council met the next day for routine business. Life went on, for now. 3 months later, first cracks appeared. The Varaxian Empire and the Kelter Confederacy had a trade dispute over mineral rights in a border system. It was a routine matter, the kind that happened every few years. Usually a quick mediation session solved it, but this time, the mediation session collapsed. Both sides screamed at each other. No one could find middle ground. The dispute escalated to military threats, and in the empty Earth Embassy building, dust began to gather on the furniture that no one had bothered to remove. Humans departed quietly. The Galactic Council paid the cost. Part 2. The unraveling begins 6 months after the humans left. High Arbiter Thex stood in the council chamber and felt something he had not experienced in his 200-year career: genuine fear. The chamber was in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other. Security had to separate 2 ambassadors who had nearly come to physical combat. The peaceful debates that had characterized council sessions for centuries had become screaming matches. Dex roared, his voice amplified through the speakers. "We must have order." Nobody listened. The Varaxian Kelter dispute had exploded into a full military standoff. 50 warships on each side now faced each other at the border. Both sides demanded the council support their position. Both sides threatened to leave the Union if they did not get their way. Ambassador Miara watched from the Kalash platform, her heart's heavy. She had tried to mediate, but she lacked the training. She lacked the patience. She lacked whatever magic the humans had possessed that made angry people listen. She pulled up the historical records on her datapad. Every major dispute in the last 300 years had been resolved by human mediators. Not because humans had special powers, but because they had spent centuries learning, training, studying every species, culture, and psychology. They knew how to find common ground, and now they were gone. But the military crisis was only the beginning. On the agricultural world of plenty, Administrator Zelek stared at his crop reports with growing horror. The yields had dropped by 40%. The soil was turning gray and lifeless. Plants that had thrived for 2 centuries were dying. What is happening? He demanded of his new farming supervisors. They had no answer. They followed the same procedures the humans had used. They planted the same crops. But something was wrong. In the abandoned farmhouse that had belonged to Maria Santos, a datapad lay forgotten on a table. On its screen was a detailed soil management program, updated weekly for 200 years. It tracked nutrient levels, crop rotation schedules, and seasonal treatments. The last entry, written in Maria's careful handwriting, read, "Remember, soil supplement mix C7 must be applied every third season without fail. The world's volcanic soil requires it, or all fertility will be lost within 1 year." Nobody had thought to check the farmhouse. Nobody knew the datapad existed. 3 systems away, disease outbreak hit the mining colony of Deep Rock. It started smaller, a few workers with fever. But it spread rapidly. Within 2 weeks, thousands were sick. Within a month, hundreds were dying. The colony's medical staff worked desperately, but nothing helped. The disease affected multiple species differently. Treatments that worked for Viraxians killed Kelter patients. Medicine that helped the Thrine made the Kalish worse. Dr. Thalos, the Viraxian doctor who had replaced James Wright, searched frantically through medical databases. He was a brilliant physician, top of his class. But he had only ever treated Viraxians. Cross-species medicine was impossibly complex. In desperation, he accessed the files Wright had left behind. There, buried in thousands of pages of notes, he found it, a comprehensive guide to treating multi-species infections. Wright had spent 40 years learning this knowledge, treating patients, making mistakes, and documenting everything. Talos followed the protocols exactly. They worked. The outbreak was contained. But 2,000 beings had died deaths that would not have happened if Wright had still been there. Talos sat in his office afterward, staring at Wright's files. There were tens of thousands of pages. A lifetime of learning. And he had dismissed this man as unremarkable. The problems multiplied. The galactic communication network began experiencing massive delays. Messages that once took minutes now took days. The system was failing, but nobody knew why. A Threen engineer named Slicks was assigned to investigate. She was brilliant, a genius at computer systems. She dove into the network's core programming. What she found confused her. The code was incredibly complex, with thousands of tiny patches and fixes layered over centuries. Each patch solved a specific problem. Each fix prevented a specific failure, and every single one was written by human technicians. Slicks tried to understand the logic, but it was overwhelming. The humans had not just maintained the system, they had constantly adapted it, anticipating problems before they occurred. The maintenance schedule Kumar Patel had left was not a simple checklist. It was a sophisticated diagnostic program that required constant monitoring and adjustment. The network needed daily attention. Humans had provided it. Nobody else even knew it was necessary. Council space stations began experiencing life support failures. Environmental systems that had worked perfectly for 300 years started malfunctioning. Temperatures fluctuated wildly. Air quality dropped. Water recycling systems broke down. Emergency crews responded, fixing each problem as it appeared. But new problems emerged faster than they could work. It was like trying to plug a dam with 1,000 leaks. A maintenance supervisor on station, Unity found something that made her blood run cold. Behind an access panel, she discovered a handwritten schedule. Environmental system maintenance. Human embassy technical staff do not reassign. She pulled up the station's maintenance records. For 300 years, human technicians had performed weekly checks on every environmental system. They had caught and fixed thousands of small problems before they became big ones. Nobody had noticed. Nobody had thought to ask who was doing this work. It had just ... happened. Now those technicians were gone. Ambassador Miara compiled all the reports. She could barely believe what she was seeing. In just 6 months, the galaxy was falling apart. Military conflicts, agricultural failures, disease outbreaks, system breakdowns. And this was only the beginning. She dug deeper into the records, searching for patterns. What she found made her feel sick. Humans had filed over 40,000 maintenance reports over the years. Reports about structural problems, system inefficiencies, security vulnerabilities, agricultural concerns, medical risks. Most were marked ignored or low priority. After all, humans were not important. Why listen to them? In the council economic sector, The financial system teetered on collapse. Small, human-run banking institutions had provided crucial services: currency exchanges, trade insurance, loan management for small businesses. Humans had specialized in the boring financial work that kept commerce flowing smoothly. Without them, the system locked up. Trade slowed. Small businesses failed. Unemployment rose. The merchant princes tried to take over these functions. But they focused only on large, profitable transactions. The small deals, the everyday commerce that billions of beings depended on, that simply stopped. Hi, Arbiter. Vix called an emergency council session. The chamber was full this time. Everyone attended. Everyone was worried. "We face multiple crises," Dex announced, his voice grave. "Military conflicts, economic problems, infrastructure failures. We must address these immediately." Ambassador Krell of the Threen stood. He looked less confident than usual. "I propose we send a delegation to Earth. We should discuss the terms of their return." Several representatives nodded. The Vraxians agreed. The Kelter supported it. Even the proud merchant princes voted yes. The motion passed unanimously. Ambassador Miara volunteered to lead the delegation. She selected representatives from 10 major species and sent a message to Earth. "Honored friends, we request a meeting to discuss renewed cooperation. We are prepared to offer favorable terms." The response came quickly. Too quickly. As if Earth had been expecting this. "Your delegation may approach Earth space. You will be granted one meeting. Come unarmed. Come respectful." 3 weeks later, the delegation's ship entered the solar system. What they saw shocked them. Earth's defensive grid had expanded massively. New space stations orbited the inner planets. Construction yards built ships of unfamiliar design. Energy signatures suggested advanced technology the Council had never seen before. "What have they been doing?" whispered one delegate. Miara thought she knew. Humans had not been sitting idle. They had been building, growing, advancing. Without the Council holding them back, the ship was guided to a docking facility on Earth's moon. From there, a shuttle took them to Earth itself. To a modest building in the city of Geneva. The building was small, almost disappointingly plain. No grand architecture. No impressive displays of power. Just a simple conference room with a table and chairs. Ambassador Sarah Chen entered, looking older but unbowed. With her came 4 other humans. A woman in a technician's jumpsuit. A man in a teacher's robes. A young woman in a medical uniform. You're an elderly man in farmer's clothes. Chen smiled politely. "Welcome to Earth. You have 1 hour. Please, tell us why you have come." Humans departed quietly. The Galactic Council paid the cost. Part 3. The price of arrogance. 1 year after the humans departed, the galaxy burned. Not literally, though there were fires. 3 regional wars had erupted across Council space. The Vraxian-Kelter conflict had exploded into open combat. 50,000 beings had died already. 2 other border disputes had similarly escalated into violence. Ambassador Miara stood in her office on the Kalish homeworld, watching news feeds from across the galaxy. Every screen showed disaster. The meeting on Earth had failed. Chen and her people had listened politely to the Council's offers, resources, territory, even leadership positions. Then they had declined. Simply, firmly, finally. "We are not angry," Chen had said. "We are just done." The delegation had returned empty-handed. The Council had been furious, then desperate, then resigned. Some species talked about forcing humanity to return, but Earth's new defenses made that impossible. Humanity had become strong in their isolation. Meanwhile, the Council fell apart. Miara's communicator buzzed. "Another crisis," she answered. "Ambassador. The Council chambers have been evacuated," her aide reported. "The environmental systems failed. The building is uninhabitable." Miara closed her eyes. Even the Council's own headquarters was failing. She pulled up the maintenance records. There, in simple language, was the truth. Environmental maintenance, human embassy technical staff do not reassign to other species without proper training. Nobody had proper training. Nobody had thought it was necessary on the other side of the galaxy. Professor Velrix of the Threen Science Academy made a discovery that shattered his world. He had been reviewing his most famous papers, the innovations that had made him celebrated across council space: advanced propulsion systems, medical scanners, energy-efficient power cores. 50 years of Threen brilliance, but something bothered him. He decided to check the archives, to see what preliminary research had existed before his breakthroughs. What he found horrified him. Every single one of his innovations was built on human research. Detailed, comprehensive studies published in obscure journals, filed in forgotten databases. Humans had done the groundwork, solved the hard problems, figured out the basic principles. He had just taken their work and refined it. Velrix expanded his search. Other Threen scientists? Other species? The same pattern repeated everywhere. 60% of all major innovations in the last 300 years were based on unpublished or forgotten human research. Humans had shared their knowledge freely. They had not demanded credit or recognition. They had just wanted to help, and everyone had taken from them, assuming the ideas were their own brilliance. Velrix sat in his laboratory, surrounded by awards and honors, and felt ashamed. The economic collapse accelerated. The Galactic Trade Network, which had functioned smoothly for centuries, seized up completely. Ships could not get cargo insurance. Currency exchanges failed. Letters of credit became worthless. The merchant princes tried to stabilize the system, but they discovered something troubling. The entire network depended on thousands of small human-run institutions: trust banks, fair trade cooperatives, independent insurance providers. Humans had built a web of financial infrastructure that made honest commerce possible. Without that infrastructure, only the largest and most powerful merchants could operate. Small businesses failed by the millions. Unemployment spread. Poverty followed. On space stations across Council territory, systems continued failing. But now, the failures were: catastrophic station Meridian lost gravity control. Hundreds died in the chaos. Station Prosperity's water recycling failed, forcing evacuation. Station Unity's power core nearly melted down, saved only by emergency. Shutdown that left 50,000 beings in darkness for 3 weeks. Engineers struggled to understand what was happening. The technology was not that complex. The systems should work. A young Kalish engineer named Torvin finally figured it out. He had been reviewing maintenance logs from before the humans left, comparing them to current procedures. The difference was staggering. Human maintenance crews had not just fixed problems, they had anticipated them. They had monitored thousands of variables, looking for patterns that indicated future failures. They had replaced parts before they broke. They had updated software before bugs became critical. They had understood that these stations were not machines. They were living ecosystems that needed constant, intelligent care. Current maintenance crews just followed checklists. They fixed what broke. They could not see the patterns. They did not have the experience. Torvin estimated that Council space stations were now 3 years from complete failure. After that, they would need to be abandoned. The medical crisis deepened. The disease outbreak on Deep Rock had been contained, but others emerged. New illnesses spread across multiple species. Medical staff struggled to treat patients. Biology they did not fully understand. Cross-species medicine was incredibly complex. Each species had unique biochemistry. What helped one could kill another? It required years of study, careful observation, and detailed record-keeping. Humans had spent centuries mastering it. Other species had not bothered to learn. Why would they? Humans handled it. Dr. Thalos, who had replaced James Wright, now spent his days frantically studying Wright's files. 50,000 pages of notes. A lifetime of knowledge. Talos was brilliant, but he was just one person. Wright had been part of a network of human doctors who had shared information, consulted on difficult cases, taught each other. That network was gone. Thousands died from treatable conditions, because the knowledge to treat them had walked away. On the agricultural worlds, famine loomed. Crop failures spread. The yields continued dropping. Entire farming colonies faced starvation. Administrator Zelix on Plenty finally sent teams to search the abandoned human farmhouses. They found the data pads, the carefully maintained records, the detailed agricultural plans, but it was too late. The soil was dead. It would take decades to restore it, and the files revealed something else. Humans had been developing new, more efficient farming methods. Advanced techniques that could have doubled food production. They had been planning to share these innovations at the next Agricultural Council. That council had been scheduled for 2 months after humans left. It had been canceled. Nobody thought it was important. Zelix stood in the gray, lifeless fields and wept. Ambassador Miara compiled her research. The full picture was devastating. Humans had not been average at everything. They had been exceptional at understanding systems, how different things connected, how actions had consequences, how complex problems required patient, long-term solutions. They had been the glue holding galactic civilization together, and everyone had been too blind to see it. She presented her findings to the council. The chamber was silent as she spoke. Representatives from 400 species listened to the truth they had all missed. We did not value them, Miara concluded. We thought they were unremarkable because they were not the best at any single thing. But they were the only species that understood everything. High Arbiter Thex slumped in his chair, looking old and tired. What do? We must try again, said Ambassador Krell, though his voice lacked its usual arrogance. Offer them anything. Everything, the council voted. Unanimous again. A new delegation would go to Earth, this time with unprecedented authority. They could offer humanity leadership of the council, exclusive territory, unlimited resources. Anything to bring them back. Miara volunteered again. Deep down, she knew it would fail. But they had to try. The delegation departed for Earth, carrying offers that would have seemed impossible 2 years ago. Behind them, the galaxy continued its slow collapse. Wars spread. Economies crashed. Stations failed. People died. And in the darkness of space, near the border of Council territory, strange ships appeared. Unfamiliar designs. Unknown energy signatures. A scout ship investigated and sent back a shocking message. They are human vessels. But they are not alone. Multiple other species aboard. Unknown affiliation. They did not respond to hails. They simply watched us, then jumped away. Miara received this news as her ship approached Earth. A cold realization settled in her hearts. Humanity was not sitting idle, waiting to be begged. They were building something new, something that did not include the Council. The question was not whether humanity would turn. The question was whether the Council would survive long enough to matter. Humans departed quietly, the Galactic Council. Paid the cost Part 4, the empty chair. Delegation's ship entered Earth's solar system 3 years after humanity's departure. Ambassador Majara looked out at the transformed space before her and felt her hope die. Earth's system was no longer the modest, quiet region it had been. Massive orbital stations ringed every planet. Construction yards stretched for kilometers, building ships of elegant, powerful design. Defense platforms bristled with weapons that made Council military technology look primitive and everywhere. Ships moved between planets and stations. Not just human ships, but vessels of dozens of other species. Species Miara did not recognize. What is this? Breathed Ambassador Krell beside her. A civilization, Miara replied quietly. One that does not need us. Earth Traffic Control contacted them with the same polite firmness as before. They were granted permission to land. 1 meeting, 1 hour. The same modest building in Geneva, but this time, as their shuttle descended, Miara saw through the windows. Human cities had grown. Technology had advanced visibly. But more striking was what she saw in the streets: humans walking alongside dozens of other species. Not council species. New ones. The shuttle landed. The delegation disembarked. They were led into the same simple conference room. Ambassador Chen entered, and Miara was shocked by the change. 3 years had aged her considerably. But there was something else, a peace in her expression that had not been there before. She was not angry or bitter. She seemed content. With Chen came 5 other humans. Not diplomats or officials. Ordinary people. A maintenance worker in a worn jumpsuit, her hands stained with machine oil. A teacher with kind eyes and gray hair. A young medical researcher carrying a datapad. An elderly farmer, his dark skin weathered by sun and wind. And a middle-aged programmer, quiet and thoughtful. Chen smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Welcome back, Ambassador Miara. I see you have brought more of the council leadership this time." Krell stepped forward. "Ambassador Chen, we come with full authority to negotiate." "The council is prepared to offer." Chen raised a hand gently. "Before you make your offers, I would like my colleagues to speak. They have stories you should hear." The maintenance worker stepped forward first. Her name was Sarah Kim, and her voice was rough from years of breathing recycled station air. "Worked on Station Unity for 40 years, she began. "I filed 847 maintenance reports. Problems I found. Systems that needed attention. Potential failures that would kill people if not addressed." Her jaw tight with old frustration. "The council responded to 3 of my reports. 3. The rest were marked low priority, reviewed and dismissed. Last year, Station Unity's power core nearly melted down. The exact failure I warned about in report number 233. 15 years ago." Kim stared at the delegates. 50,000 people almost died because nobody thought my concerns were important enough to read. The teacher spoke next. His name was James Okonkwo, and he had taught xenobiology for 60 years. "I trained over 10,000 students," he said softly. "Vraxions, Threen, Kalish, Kelter, dozens of species. I loved teaching. I loved sharing knowledge." His expression hardened slightly. "I applied for the Distinguished Educator Award 6 times. I was nominated by my students, by my colleagues. Each time, I was rejected. The committee said the award was for real academic honors, meaning species that mattered, meaning not humans." He shook his head. "My Varaxian colleague, who I trained, won the award in my 5th year of rejection. He gave the same lectures I had written, but when he delivered them, they were brilliant." The medical researcher, a young woman named Dr. Patel, spoke with barely controlled emotion. "I spent 15 years developing a universal blood synthesis method. It could have saved millions of lives, allowed any species to donate blood to any other species in emergencies." She pulled up a file on her datapad. "I submitted it to the Council Medical Authority. They rejected it without review. They said cross-species medicine was adequately addressed by current methods. 3 months later, Threen researcher published the same technique. He had stolen my research from the shared database." Her voice broke slightly. "He won the Nobel Prize for Medicine. I received a form letter thanking me for my contribution to the database." The farmer, whose name was Marcus Washington, told his story simply. "I spent 50 years on Plenty. My family and I turned dead soil into living earth. We fed 15 systems. We asked for help many times. Equipment, funding, basic support. We were told agriculture was simple work that did not require resources." He looked at each delegate. "When we left, I wrote down everything needed to maintain the soil. I left it in our house, clearly labeled. Nobody checked. Now the soil is dead and people are starving. That is on you, not us." The programmer, a quiet man named David Chenno, relation to Ambassador Chen's, spoke last. "I maintained the council communication network for 30 years. It was complex work. Thousands of systems, billions of connections, constant problems that needed immediate attention." He smiled without humor. "I left a maintenance schedule. Detailed, comprehensive, everything needed to keep the network running. The administrator called it unnecessarily complex and simplified it to a basic checklist. David pulled up a chart. This shows network efficiency over the last 3 years. You are currently operating at 40% capacity. In 2 more years, the network will fail completely. It cannot be fixed quickly. It would take decades to rebuild. He met their eyes. I knew this would happen. I warned them. Nobody listened. Silence filled the room. The delegates looked at each other, uncomfortable and ashamed. Finally, Krell found his voice. We acknowledge these injustices. That is why we are here. To make amends. The Council is prepared to offer humanity leadership positions. Chen interrupted gently. Territory. Resources. Full recognition? Krell nodded eagerly. Yes, all of that. Humanity could lead the Council. Your people could hold the highest positions. Name your price. Chen looked at her colleagues, then back at the delegates. When she spoke, her voice was kind, but absolutely firm. No. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. But Miara began. Ambassador Miara, Chen said, you are a good person. You tried to understand. You tried to help. I appreciate that, truly. She walked to the window, looking out at the transformed Earth. But you need to understand something. We did not leave because we wanted better positions or more recognition. We left because we finally realized we were enabling a system that neither valued nor respected us. She turned back to face them. For 300 years, we held your civilization together. We did the boring work, the unglamorous work, the work that no one else wanted to do. We did it well. We did it faithfully. And we were invisible. Her voice grew stronger. Every innovation we shared was claimed by others. Every warning we gave was ignored. Every contribution we made was dismissed as simple or obvious or not worthy of recognition. We were good enough to do the work, but not good enough to be valued for it. Ambassador Chen walked back to the table and placed both hands on it, leaning forward. You are not offering us respect. You are offering us bribes to come back and fix your problems. There is a difference. Then what do you want? Krell asked desperately. We do not want anything from you, Chen replied simply. We are done. She gestured to the window, to the thriving solar system beyond. Out there we have built something new. We found other species who were also dismissed, also undervalued, also tired of being invisible. We are building a civilization based on mutual respect, on recognizing everyone's contributions, on valuing the work that holds society together. Miara felt tears forming. So this is our punishment? You will let us fall? No, Chen said, and her voice was genuinely sad. This is not punishment. We are not angry anymore. Anger was what we felt the first year. Now we just feel ... free. She looked at each delegate in turn. We spent so much time and energy trying to earn your respect, trying to prove we mattered. We forgot that we did not need your validation. We were already valuable. We just needed to believe it ourselves. Ambassador Chen moved toward the door, signaling the meeting was ending. Your hour is almost up. Go back to the council. Tell them humanity will not return. Tell them we wish them well. Tell them we hope they learn to value what they have before they lose it again. The delegates stood slowly, realizing there was nothing more to say. As they left, Miara turned back one more time. Will you at least share your knowledge? Help us repair what is breaking. Chen considered this for a long moment. Perhaps, she said finally, but not now. Right now, you need to learn to save yourselves. You need to understand what we did, why it mattered, and how to do it yourselves. Otherwise, you will just become dependent on us again. She smiled sadly. It is like teaching a child to walk. Sometimes the kindest thing is to let them try on their own. The delegation returned to their ship in silence. As they departed Earth's system, past dozens of ships from species they did not recognize, species who had found what the Council had lost. On the journey back, Ambassador Miara composed her report. It would be the hardest thing she had ever written. Humanity will not return, she wrote. Not because they cannot forgive us, but because they no longer need us. We must now face the consequences of our arrogance and learn to value what remains before we lose that too. In the council chamber, an empty chair sat on the human platform. High Arbiter Thex had ordered it to remain there, a reminder of what they had lost. Every day representatives walked past it. Every day they were reminded. And every day, the galaxy around them fell a little further apart. Humans departed quietly. The Galactic Council paid the cost. Part 5. The Long Road Home, 5 years after humanity's departure. Ambassador Miara stood in the rebuilt council chamber and felt something she had not experienced in a long time. Hope. The chamber was smaller now. The grand crystalline walls had been replaced with simpler construction after the old building became uninhabitable. Only 200 species remained and the council half had left, or collapsed entirely. The floating platforms were gone, replaced by a circular table where all representatives sat as equals. The empty chair remained. It sat at the table like a silent witness, reminding them every day of their failure and their lesson. Miara was no longer just an ambassador. She was now the High Arbiter, elected unanimously 3 years ago. Not because she was powerful or brilliant, but because she had understood what humanity had been trying to teach them. She called the session to order. Today marks the 5th anniversary of humanity's departure. As has become our tradition, we will reflect on what we have learned. Around the table, representatives nodded solemnly. This was not a happy celebration, but it was an important one. Ambassador Torvin, of the Kalish Miara's former aide, now a full ambassador, stood first. He was a young engineer who had spent 5 years learning what human maintenance workers had known instinctively. The station infrastructure has stabilized, he reported. We have lost 12 stations that could not be saved, but the remaining stations are now maintained properly. We established the Systems Thinking Institute, which trains maintenance workers in the methods humans developed. We have 3,000 graduates now. He paused, his voice humble. It took us 4 years to understand what they tried to teach us, and 300. But we are learning. Dr. Thalos spoke next, his purple scales dimmer with age and exhaustion. Medical services have improved. The Universal Medical Database, built from Dr. Wright's files and contributions from human doctors who finally agreed to share their knowledge, remotely has saved countless lives. He held up a datapad. This contains 50,000 pages of cross-species medical research. Humans offered it freely, asking nothing in return. They said knowledge should be shared, not hoarded. We are finally learning to think the same way. The agricultural report came from a young Viraxian named Celis. She had spent 3 years on Earth as a volunteer, learning from human farmers how to work with living soil. 17 agricultural worlds have been restored using human techniques, she said. It is slow work. The soil must be healed, not forced. But we are no longer facing famine, she smiled slightly. The humans taught me that farming is not simple work. It is partnership with living systems. It requires patience, observation, and respect. I was arrogant to think otherwise. Professor Velrix, the Threan scientist who had discovered the truth about human research, gave the technology report. He looked much older than 5 years should have made him. We have established proper research attribution protocols, he said quietly. All past innovations are being reviewed. Credit is being restored to the original researchers. Many were human. Some were from other unremarkable species we had overlooked. His voice cracked slightly. I returned all my awards and honors. They were built on stolen work. I am now teaching a course called The Ethics of Knowledge, learning to give credit where it is due. The economic recovery report brought cautious optimism. The small financial institutions that humans had maintained were slowly being rebuilt. Fair trade cooperatives were forming again. It was fragile, but it was functioning. The wars had ended 2 years ago. Not through military victory, but through exhaustion and mediation training programs. The Council had established the Diplomatic Institute, teaching the techniques human mediators had developed. It was not as effective as having actual humans, but it was better than nothing. Miara listened to all the reports, feeling pride mixed with sadness. They were surviving. They were learning. But the cost had been devastating. 50 million beings had died in the wars. Billions had suffered through famine and economic collapse. Entire civilizations had fallen. It would take generations to fully recover, all because they had failed to value those who held them together. "We have one more report," Miara said. "Communications from humanity." The chamber went quiet. Contact with humans was still limited and formal, but in the last year something had changed. Miara pulled up a message on the central display. It was from Ambassador Chen, now elderly but still serving Earth's diplomatic corps. The message read, "To the Galactic Council. We have observed your efforts at recovery with interest and respect. We acknowledge the hard work you have done to learn the lessons we tried to teach. You have suffered greatly, but you have not given up. That is admirable," Miara continued reading. "We are prepared to propose a new relationship. Not a return to the old ways, but something different. Something equal." A holographic image appeared at Border Station, elegant in its simplicity. Half council design, half human. "We propose the establishment of border stations where our civilizations can meet, trade, and share knowledge. No species has authority over the other. No contributions are taken for granted. All work is valued and credited properly." The message continued with specific proposals. Human doctors would serve at medical exchanges, training council physicians, and learning from them. Human engineers would share infrastructure knowledge in return for council advances in other fields. Human mediators would serve as consultants, but council diplomats would do the actual work. It was not reunion. It was partnership. The final line of the message read, "We do not forget what happened, but we believe in growth, in learning, in second chances. If you are willing to meet us as equals, we are willing to meet you halfway." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives wept. Others debated the details. But everyone agreed this was the chance they had hoped for. Miara called for a vote. The motion to accept humanity's proposal passed unanimously. 3 months later, the first border station opened. It was called Common Ground.
Out.
And its dedication ceremony brought together species that had not spoken in years. Miara attended as the council's representative. Ambassador Chen attended for humanity. They met in the center of the station, where a plaque had been installed. The plaque read, "Here we meet as equals. Here we remember that all work has value. Here we build together what neither can build alone." Chen and Miara shook hands, a human custom that had spread throughout the galaxy. "Thank you for not giving up on us," Miara said softly. Chen smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "We did not do this for you. We did it because it is the right thing to do. That is what we tried to teach you all along, doing what is right, not what is convenient or profitable." Over the next year, more border stations opened. Trade resumed. Knowledge flowed both directions. Council species slowly learned to work with their hands, to value maintenance and teaching and farming and all the simple work that held civilization together, and humans learned too. They learned that isolation was not the answer, that connection and cooperation could exist without exploitation if both sides committed to respect. 10 years after the departure, a young human maintenance worker named James Wright Jr., named for his grandfather, boarded Station Unity for the first time. He was there as part of the engineering exchange program as he walked through the station corridors. Older beings who had worked with his grandfather stopped him. They wanted to shake his hand. They wanted to say thank you. They wanted to tell him how much they had learned. James was overwhelmed. "I am just here to do my job," he said. An elderly, Kalish maintenance supervisor smiled at him. "That is exactly what your grandfather would have said. But now we understand your job is not just a job. It is essential. It matters. You matter." She led him to the station's maintenance center. On the wall was a memorial plaque listing the names of all the human maintenance workers who had served the station over 300 years. At the top was his grandfather's name. "We put this up 3 years ago," she explained. "So we never forget what we failed to see. So the next generation understands that every worker, every contribution, every person who keeps the systems running They are the heroes who hold civilization together. James touched his grandfather's name gently. Tears in his eyes in the council chamber, the empty chair remained at the table. But now it was not empty out of absence. It was empty by choice, kept as a reminder and a promise. Some things should not be forgotten. Miara, now elderly and nearing the end of her time as High Arbiter, looked at that chair every day. She had started a tradition. Every new ambassador, every new council member sat in that empty chair on their first day. They sat there and read the stories of what had been lost. They learned the names of humans who had served and been forgotten. They learned the cost of taking someone for granted. On Earth, Ambassador Chen retired after 40 years of service. She spent her final years writing. A memoir called The Invisible Workers became required reading in schools, across both human space and council space. The last chapter was titled The Long Road Home, and it ended with these words: "We did not return to save the galaxy. We could not have saved it even if we wanted to. Salvation is not something you can do for someone else. It is something they must do for themselves. We returned to teach what we had learned, that the strongest civilizations are not built on the backs of the powerful, but on the hands of the everyday people who keep things running. The teachers, the farmers, the mechanics, the nurses, the maintenance workers, the invisible ones who make everything else possible. When you learn to see them, to value them, to respect them, that is when you become worthy of their gifts. That is when you truly become civilized." 20 years after the departure, a young Threen student asked her teacher a question. Why did the humans leave? The teacher, who had been trained in the new educational methods that emphasized critical thinking and empathy, smiled. "That is a good question. They left because we did not see them. We did not value what they did. We took them for granted, but they came back," the student said. "They did not come back," the teacher corrected gently. "They met us halfway. There is a difference. They maintained their dignity and their independence. They demanded respect, not by force, but by absence. And when we finally learned the lesson, they offered us a second chance." The student thought about this. Will we ever be forgiven? The teacher looked out the window at a human transport ship docking at their station, bringing exchange students and teachers and engineers. "That is the wrong question," she said. "Forgiveness is not about forgetting what happened. It is about choosing to build something better. The humans did not forgive us because we asked for it. They gave us the chance to earn it, slowly, through changed actions and genuine respect." She turned back to her student. "And that is a lesson worth remembering. Because someday, you might be the one who needs to offer that chance to someone else." The galaxy turned. Civilizations grew. Mistakes were made and learned from. The border stations multiplied, becoming bustling centers of cooperation and exchange. And in every council chamber, in every human embassy, in every school and hospital and station throughout both civilizations, a reminder remained: value. What holds you together before it walks away? Because the invisible workers are not invisible at all. They are the foundation, and without them, everything falls.